15 bucks an hour for flipping burgers? Are you out of your flipping mind? Now, I'm all for helping out the little guy, but this ain't the way, guys. These fast food workers protesting around the country, I am telling you, they haven't a clue. They're not dumb, but they are being duped. The folks duping them won't tell them that. The mainstream media sure won't say that. But tonight, I will. Welcome, everybody. I'm Neil Cavuto, and I can hear the critics now. That Cavuto must be one callous creep SOB because of what I'm about to say now. Get writing, because all you fast food workers pushing for a doubling in the minimum wage to 15 bucks, you're more than doubling your chances of just getting fired. And all you unions pushing them into joining these ridiculous protests, you're the ones pushing them right off the cliff. And, by the way, you self-important 53 congressmen just dashing off a sanctimonious letter to restaurant executives that they hike wages fast. Why don't you focus more on providing the environment for jobs, any jobs right now? All right, now, I know this is going to bug some people, but I'm knee-deep. Maybe it's going to sound very heartless to people, but I got to continue. Now is not the time to be talking about hiking the minimum wage for workers. Now is the time to focus on just finding folks work. Too many can't, and arbitrarily demanding companies pay their workers more will guarantee too many never will. Here's why. Companies paying a slightly higher minimum wage is one thing. Doubling that wage is quite another thing. Higher paid workers will rightly demand they get more as well. And so too the workers above them and then the ones above them. And remember, the fast food companies you think have the money to pay that wage do not speak for the far more small companies and small businesses that simply cannot. They're the ones who'll feel the pinch of this, and if not lay off workers, might even have to close their doors just dealing with the expense of this. Now, I'm not here to say people are due good pay for a good day's work. I am here to say that 53 congressmen defining that pay and lecturing anyone on work, well, pieces of work. Now, unlike you, Congressman, private sector bosses have to pay for your good intentions. So riddle me this. Will your constituents happily pay double for their burger and fries if you double the pay for the folks who make said burger and fries? But I digress. If you talk about a wage gap in this country, you don't narrow it by artificially inflating the lower end of it or taxing the hell out of the upper end of it. You try to grow both sides of it. You allow an economy to flourish that allows all boats to float. Congress should worry less about what businesses are paying and more to what businesses are saying. They're overregulated, they're overtaxed, and right now they're overwrought. And all you unions feigning sudden interest in these workers' plight, where have you been? Since when have you suddenly started caring? Methinks you're more interested in signing them up than helping them out. All right, so go ahead, one and all, and rip me a new one. I suspect in short order, many blogs and liberals will do just that. Just remember this. You can't legislate wage equality any more than you could force economic activity. Private markets do that. The government can't even fathom that. And let us also remember, it's only a small slice of the working population that's even paid at this minimum wage level, and for the most part, for only a very short time, before they advance and before their good work leads to good things and better pay. They do that, their work determines that. And it is in their bosses' interest to reward them for that. Not governments, not unions. Everyone, put down your harps and quit harping and quit whining and start thinking. Because whining about injustice only works if you are seeking justice and not just a nice headline or another union member to just stand in line. So let the bashing begin, and let it begin with us. Some food for thought on whether fast food workers should be getting paid double right now with Crystal Wright, Ford O'Connell, and Guy Benson, who says that if these workers don't like the wages, well, they might find jobs elsewhere, or should try. Easier said than done, right, Crystal?
Yes, and I think you made a case for the fact that doubling the minimum wage is actually going to hurt the very people who need jobs. We have millions of Americans who've been out of work with chronic unemployment above 7%. I'm sure they would love to have these jobs that these so-called fast food workers don't. You can't double the minimum wage in an environment where Obamacare is already killing jobs. You have employers saying, hey, I'm not going to hire because I can't afford to pay health insurance and wages for 50-plus employees. And like you said, you know, well, I don't know if you said this, but it really harms minorities. Black and Hispanics get disproportionately harmed because we always have higher unemployment rate. I mean, doubling the minimum wage, Neil, right before the show, we talked about the fact the minimum wage was hiked a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it should be about this president and Democrats introducing policies that are going to create jobs so we can buy more fast food, and then the fast food companies, as you work, can give merit pay raises and help people advance up the food chain.
That's very well put, Crystal. You should have actually said the lead here. But, Guy, the one thing I always notice is we always get it asked backwards. We're always talking about anything we can do to force companies to change policies without providing the environment that would encourage them to just hire more workers. We get it backwards.
That is exactly the point. And, Neil, I think this is a very difficult issue, frankly, for conservatives to win on and to talk about in a way that persuades people because
they cut you off in the middle of your argument,
Yeah, well, and it's also very popular with the American people to hike the minimum wage. This is something that people just generally intuitively support. Oh, let's pay people more. That's a good thing. They can provide for themselves. But our argument that we have to advance is counterintuitive, and it's difficult to really lay it out in a simple way. I think the best way to do it is to say, we all agree that we need more jobs in this country. We don't need fewer jobs. We need more jobs. So raising the price point, that entry point, for job creation is going to create fewer jobs. And that doesn't make sense. That hurts everyone involved. I think that's the best argument conservatives can advance on this because citing economic studies and talking about ripple effects sounds cold and callous.
Yeah, well, and I think to Crystal's point, too, it alienates the very folks you're trying to reach. But, Ford, I want to raise an issue with you about, does someone forget the consumer in the middle of all of this? Because he or she then pays for this. I mean, the value meals go if you're telling McDonald's or Burger King, that you're doubling the minimum wage and that those costs will be carried on. They might not double the price of those meals, but they will certainly not be as low as they were. And then you've got to wonder whether people will go to these institutions to warrant the higher prices that are now at these institutions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you're exactly right. If the prices go up, it's going to be passed on to the consumer. And if the consumer sees that the price is too high, they're going to cut back. Neil, I'm going to come in on the side of the small business owner. 80 to 90% of these fast food franchises are independently owned, and they run these businesses at the margins, if you will, on the balance sheet. And they only net $88,000 a year, and they already have to pay a $450,000 franchise fee. These are small business owners providing a public good, and frankly, if we regulate them anymore, there's going to be no more transitional jobs for people to grow out of.